The massive starship Starweaver drifted silently in Earth's orbit, its sleek silver hull reflecting the sunlight. The ship belonged to the most advanced civilization in the known galaxy, the Galactic Council. Captain Do-hyun stood on the observation deck, his tall, slender frame towering at 8 feet. His silvery eyes with their vertical pupils scanned the blue planet below, taking in the swirling white clouds and vast oceans. As the head of this first contact mission, Do-hyun had reviewed countless reports about Earth and its inhabitants. The data suggested a young species that had barely taken its first steps into space. His inner eyelids blinked rapidly as he processed the information streaming across his neural interface. Science Officer Jae-yun entered the observation deck, her steps light and graceful despite her heavy exoskeleton. Her sensory antennae twitched constantly, sampling the air and electromagnetic frequencies around her. Like all members of her species, she had an innate ability to detect energy patterns and radiation. "Captain, I've completed the preliminary scans," Jae-yun reported, her translator converting her natural clicking speech into standard galactic. "The humans are interesting." She pulled up a holographic display showing human biological data. "Interesting how?" Do-hyun asked, turning away from the viewport to study the readings. "They're remarkably primitive in many ways," Jae-yun explained, her antennae moving in patterns that expressed mild amusement. "Their bodies are extremely fragile compared to most spacefaring races. They have no natural armor, no backup organs, and they're completely dependent on oxygen. Even their bones are brittle compared to ours." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "And their technological progress?" "That's the strange part," Jae-yun said, bringing up a timeline. "They only achieved faster than light travel within the last 200 years. By our standards, they're barely out of their cradle. Most species take at least 500 years after discovering spaceflight to develop FTL technology." The captain's facial scales shifted to a lighter shade, indicating deep thought. "How did they manage that?" "Unknown," Jae-yun admitted, "but their development curve is unlike anything we've seen before. It's almost exponential." Do-hyun moved to his command chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. "Prepare the diplomatic pod. We'll make contact with their United Earth government as planned." He turned to Jae-yun. "Have you selected the landing site?" "Yes, Captain. Their main governmental complex in a region they call Geneva. The atmospheric conditions are optimal for our life support systems." The diplomatic pod, a smaller vessel designed for planetary landings, detached from the Starweaver. As they began their descent through Earth's atmosphere, Jae-yun's antennas suddenly went rigid. Her multiple hands flew across the control panel. "Sir," her voice carried a note of alarm that made Do-hyun's scales darken with concern. "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures, patterns we've never seen before." "Explain," Do-hyun commanded, leaning forward in his chair. Jae-yun's antennae were practically vibrating now. "The readings, they don't match any known energy type in our database. They're coming from multiple locations across the planet's surface, and even from their lunar colony. The energy output levels are impossible for their level of development." Do-hyun's inner eyelids blinked rapidly as he processed this information. "Could our sensors be malfunctioning?" "No, sir. I've run 3 separate diagnostic checks. These readings are real." Jae-yun adjusted their sensors for a more detailed scan. "There's something else. The energy patterns. They're incredibly efficient, more efficient than our own power systems." The captain stood and moved to the viewport, watching as Earth grew larger below them. His mind raced with possibilities. How could a species so physically vulnerable, so young in their development, have created energy systems that surpassed the Galactic Council's technology? "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we need to adjust our approach to this first contact." His scales shifted to a deep blue of determination. "These humans, they may be more than they appear to be." As the diplomatic pod continued its descent, both Do-hyun and Jae-yun watched the readings with growing amazement. The closer they got to Earth's surface, the more anomalies they detected. Their sensors picked up quantum fluctuations that shouldn't have been possible with human technology, energy shields that operated on principles they'd never seen before, and communication systems that seemed to defy the laws of physics as they knew them. The humans they had come to study, to possibly guide into the galactic community, were turning out to be far more mysterious than anyone had anticipated. Do-hyun felt a mixture of excitement and unease as they approached Geneva. This first contact mission was about to become much more interesting than he had expected. The grand meeting chamber in Geneva's International Space Center was a perfect blend of Earth's classical architecture and modern technology. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. The air was thick with tension as alien and human delegates sat facing each other across a large oval table. Hajum stood at the head of the table, his confident posture betraying none of the excitement he felt at meeting beings from another world. He wore the simple but elegant blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, with silver pins indicating his rank as chief representative. He touched a small device on his wrist, and suddenly the air above the table came alive with light. A detailed three-dimensional hologram materialized, showing the solar system in perfect detail. The alien delegates leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused intently on the display. "As you can see," Hajum began, his voice calm and measured, "we established our Mars colony 50 years ago." The hologram zoomed in on Mars, showing massive domed cities and sprawling underground complexes, and our Venus terraforming project is in its final stages. The image shifted to Venus, where massive atmospheric processors were visible from orbit. Do-hyun's mandibles clicked rapidly, the alien equivalent of a shocked gasp. His silver eyes widened, and his scales rippled with colors of disbelief. "Impossible," he stated, the translator converting his clicks and whistles into smooth human speech. "Your species only mastered nuclear fission 2 centuries ago. The energy requirements alone for Venus terraforming would be..." Hajum allowed himself a small smile. "True," he acknowledged, "but technology has a way of advancing in unexpected leaps." He made another gesture, and the hologram changed to show a massive facility in the Sahara Desert. "You might find our quantum computing facilities interesting, or perhaps our fusion farms." Science officer Jae-yun was frantically working with her instruments, her antennae twitching wildly. The readings she was getting from the human facilities made no sense. According to her devices, the humans were casually manipulating quantum states in ways that should have required thousands more years of technological development. The energy output from their fusion facilities exceeded anything in the Galactic Council's database. "This can't be right," she muttered in her native language, forgetting her translator for a moment. Her multiple hands moved rapidly over her scanning equipment, recalibrating and checking for errors. Hajum noticed her distress and spoke gently. "Perhaps we could help you adjust your sensors to better read our technology. We'd found that traditional measuring methods sometimes struggle with our newer developments." Do-hyun exchanged glances with his science officer. The humans were offering to help them understand technology that by all rights they shouldn't even have. "Your genetic modifications," he said carefully, "our scans indicate they're far more advanced than should be possible for your current development stage." "Ah, yes," Hajum said, changing the hologram again. This time it showed the inside of a medical facility where doctors were using what looked like streams of light to directly manipulate DNA. "We found that our shorter lifespans compared to most spacefaring races pushed us to develop rather creative solutions." The alien delegation watched in stunned silence as Hojun explained how humans had learned to safely rewrite their genetic code, enhance their natural abilities, and even create entirely new biological systems within their bodies. What made it more remarkable was that they had done all this while maintaining their humanity. These weren't cyborgs or artificial beings, but humans who had found ways to improve themselves while staying essentially human. Jae-yun's readings became even more chaotic as Hojun demonstrated more of Earth's achievements. The humans had developed ways to harness zero-point energy, created stable microsingularities for power generation, and even found methods to manipulate the fabric of space-time itself for their FTL drives. But how? Du-Hyun finally asked, his translator struggling to convey the complex mix of emotions in his voice. How did you advance so quickly? Hejum's expression became thoughtful. We had to, he said simply. Our planet was dying. Our resources were running out. Our bodies were too fragile for long-term space exploration. We didn't have the luxury of taking things slowly. Necessity drove us to find solutions that other races might have overlooked. The human turned to look out the window at the bustling city below, where flying vehicles moved smoothly between buildings that seemed to defy gravity. Sometimes, he continued, being physically weak can be an advantage. It forces you to become strong in other ways. Do-Hyun and his team sat in silence, processing this revelation. They had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species in need of guidance. Instead, they had found a civilization that had taken an entirely different path to advancement, one that had produced results that even the Galactic Council's best scientists hadn't thought possible. The meeting chamber fell quiet again, as both sides contemplated the implications of this encounter. It was becoming clear that this first contact would change not just Earth, but the entire galactic community. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was being held in their grand orbital station, a massive structure that curved around a distant star. The chamber's crystalline walls sparkled with the light of 1,000 stars, but today none of the council members were admiring the view. All attention was focused on Science Officer Jae-Yun as she presented her findings about Earth. Jae-Yun stood at the center of the circular chamber, her exoskeleton gleaming under the soft light. Her antennae moved in complex patterns as she projected her data onto the chamber's main display. Around her, representatives from over 300 advanced civilizations watched with growing concern. The humans have achieved something unprecedented, Jae-Yun began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Their neural interface technology doesn't just surpass our systems, it operates on principles we never considered possible. The display showed detailed scans of human neural implants. Unlike the bulky mechanical interfaces used by most species, the human versions were almost invisible, integrating seamlessly with their biological systems. They've developed a symbiotic relationship with their artificial intelligence systems, Jae-Yun continued. While we kept our AI separate and controlled, they chose to merge with it. The results are extraordinary. Admiral Sang-mai, a respected member of the Council's military division, leaned forward in her hover chair. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with skepticism. How? She demanded. Their bodies are so frail. Their brains are simple organic computers. How could they possibly handle such integration? Jae-Yun activated another display, showing the human brain connected to their neural network. That's just it, she explained, her antennae twitching with excitement. They turned their weaknesses into strengths. Their limited lifespan drove them to innovate faster. Their fragility led them to develop incredible protective systems. The chamber erupted in clicking, whistling, and various other sounds as council members debated among themselves. Jae-Yun waited patiently for order to be restored. Look at this, she continued, zooming in on a neural interface. They didn't try to force their brains to work like computers. Instead, they designed systems that work like their brains. Their eye doesn't just process information, it thinks in metaphors, dreams, and intuitive leaps. The display showed human scientists working alongside their AI partners, their thoughts flowing together in ways that seemed impossible. Their neural networks didn't just share data, they shared experiences, emotions, and even creative insights. Their protective systems are equally remarkable, Jae-Yun added. Instead of trying to make their bodies stronger, they developed ways to prevent damage altogether. Their personal shield technology can predict and deflect threats before they even materialize. One council member, a being of pure energy, pulsed with confusion. But their power requirements must be enormous. Jai Yun's antennae drooped slightly. That's another thing we don't understand. Their systems use less energy than ours, not more. They'd found ways to work with natural biological processes instead of fighting against them. The chamber fell silent as recordings played, showing humans using their neural interfaces in daily life. Children learning complex subjects in minutes, artists creating impossible works by directly sharing their visions, scientists solving problems that had stumped the greatest minds of other species. There's more, Jai Yun said quietly. They're not stopping. Their rate of innovation is still increasing. Every weakness we identified in their species, they've found a way to turn into an advantage. Admiral Sangmi's bioluminescence had shifted to patterns of deep thought. What are you suggesting, science officer? Jai Yun's antennae straightened with determination. I'm suggesting that we need to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about technological development. The humans aren't just advancing. They're advancing in ways we never imagined possible. She brought up one final display, showing the exponential curve of human progress over the past 2 centuries. Their very limitations pushed them to find solutions we never considered. While we focused on making stronger bodies and faster computers, they found ways to transcend the need for either. The council chamber remained quiet as the implications sank in. The humans, a species they had initially dismissed as primitive and weak, had developed technologies that could revolutionize the entire galaxy. And they had done it not despite their weaknesses, but because of them. We came to teach them. Jai Yun concluded, her voice filled with wonder. But I believe we may be the ones who need to learn. The emergency session continued long into the night as the Galactic Council grappled with this new reality. The galaxy was changing, and at its center was a species that had done the impossible, not through strength or superiority, but through the clever exploitation of their own limitations. The emergency alarms blared throughout the Galactic Council station, their haunting sound echoing through the crystalline corridors. Scientists and officials from hundreds of species rushed through the halls, their movements urgent and fearful. The threat they faced was unlike anything encountered in recorded history. In the main observatory, Admiral Sangme stood before a massive holographic display showing the approaching disaster. A gamma-ray burst of unprecedented magnitude was heading directly toward both Earth and the Council's core systems. The deadly beam of radiation stretched across light years, moving at the speed of light itself. "Show me the latest simulations," Sangmai ordered, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with stress patterns. The technical team quickly brought up the data, their various appendages moving rapidly over the control surfaces. The simulation played out before them. The Council's most powerful shield technology, developed over thousands of years, flickering and failing against the sheer power of the incoming burst. Planet after planet went dark in the projection. "All our simulations show failure," Sangmai announced grimly to the assembled emergency council. "Our best deflector arrays can't handle this magnitude. Even if we diverted power from every system in the Alliance, it wouldn't be enough." In the Earth Embassy section of the station, Ambassador Du-hyun sat in his private chamber, his scales dark with worry. The past year serving as ambassador to Earth had changed him profoundly. He had learned to respect and even admire the humans' unconventional approaches to problems. But now, facing extinction, he wondered if even their creativity could help. His communication panel suddenly lit up with an incoming call from Earth. Hejun's familiar face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. The human had aged since their first meeting, silver streaking his hair, but his eyes remained as sharp as ever. "Ambassador Du-hyun," Hejun said without preamble, "we might have a solution." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But you're not going to like it." Do-hyun's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. "At this point, Hejun, I don't think we can afford to be picky. What's your idea?" Hejun began sharing technical data through the communication link. "We've been working on something in secret, a way to manipulate space-time itself using our quantum AI networks. We think we can create a temporary fold in reality, essentially making the affected system skip forward in time until the burst passes. Do Hyun's scales shifted to a color of shock. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical using conventional methods. Hejun agreed. But we're not using conventional methods. We're using our neural interface technology to let our AI systems directly manipulate quantum fields. We've done small-scale tests. It works. The ambassador studied the data scrolling across his screen. The mathematics were unlike anything he'd ever seen, a bizarre blend of quantum mechanics and biological processing that shouldn't have been possible. The Council will never agree to this. It goes against every safety protocol we have. Then they'll die, Hejun said simply. We all will. The burst will sterilize every system in its path. We don't have time to find another solution. Do-hyun's chamber suddenly filled with the sound of another alarm. The burst had been detected by more sensors, confirming its trajectory and power. They had less than 48 hours before impact. How quickly can you implement this solution? Do-hyun asked, his diplomatic training warring with his survival instinct. We've already begun preparations on Earth, but we'll need the Council's quantum networks to extend the effect to their systems. And, Hejun hesitated, we'll need volunteers to interface directly with the system. It's not without risk. Do-hyun understood what wasn't being said. The human neural interfaces were designed for human brains. Using them could kill or permanently damage other species. But facing extinction, what choice did they have? I'll take your proposal to Admiral Sangmi immediately, Do-hyun said, standing. But Hejun, are you certain this will work? The human's face showed a complex mix of emotions. No, but I am certain that if we don't try, everyone dies anyway. As Do-hyun hurried through the station's corridors toward the emergency council chamber, he reflected on how far they'd come. A year ago, he wouldn't have even considered such an outlandish plan. But he learned that with humans, the impossible often turned out to be merely improbable. The fate of two civilizations now rested on whether the Council could overcome its fear of the unknown and trust in human innovation one more time. Behind him, the massive view screen showed the approaching wave of destruction, a reminder that time was running out for them all. In the vast council chamber, tension crackled like static electricity. Thousands of alien representatives gathered in the tiered seating, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of shapes and colors. At the center of the chamber, Young-Mei stood calmly beside a holographic display, her Earth Science Division uniform crisp despite the hours of emergency preparations. The timer on the main screen continued its relentless countdown. 41 hours until the gamma-ray burst would reach their systems. Young-Mei took a deep breath, her augmented neural interface subtly glowing beneath her skin as she connected to the chamber's presentation systems. Our solution is unprecedented, she began, her voice steady and clear. We propose using quantum entanglement on a massive scale to create a temporary pocket dimension. This would redirect the burst's energy away from our reality. The chamber exploded into chaos. Beings of all forms began shouting, clicking, and pulsing their objections. The translation systems struggled to keep up with the flood of protests in hundreds of languages. Impossible, thundered a crystalline being from the upper tier. The energy requirements would tear apart the fabric of space. Too dangerous, warbled another, its gas-formed body flashing with agitation. We could create a cascade failure across multiple dimensions. It violates fundamental laws of physics, declared a council elder, their ancient mechanical body creaking as they stood in protest. Young-Mei waited patiently for the outcry to subside. Beside her, Hejun stepped forward, his presence commanding attention despite his relatively small human stature. Years of diplomatic work had taught him how to handle the council's dramatic reactions. We've already tested this technology on smaller scales, Hejun announced, his voice cutting through the diminishing chaos. With your power sources combined with our quantum technology, we can make it work. Young-Mei activated the next part of their presentation. Above them, A detailed simulation showed their proposed solution. Quantum entanglement fields, represented by intricate patterns of light, formed a massive web around their star systems. Our AI networks have calculated the exact requirements, Yumai explained. We'll need to link 17,000 quantum nodes across both our civilizations. The entanglement field will create a temporary bubble of altered spacetime, lasting just long enough to redirect the burst's energy. Admiral Sangmi moved forward, her bioluminescence patterns showing deep concern. The power requirements must be astronomical. Even our combined resources will be sufficient, Yumai interrupted gently. But only if we use them in a way you haven't considered before. She brought up another display, showing a new type of power distribution network. We'll link your zero-point energy collectors with our quantum AI systems. The AIs will optimize power flow in real time, drawing energy from millions of parallel quantum states simultaneously. The Council's senior physicist, a being of pure energy contained within a complex field generator, moved closer to examine the calculations. This is remarkable, they admitted, but the risks are less than certain death, Hejun stated firmly. He gestured to the countdown timer. In 40 hours, that burst will sterilize every system in its path. We can spend those hours arguing about theoretical risks, or we can take action. Yumei brought up their final simulation. We've mapped out every step. The quantum web will form a dimensional pocket lasting exactly 73 seconds. The burst's energy will be redirected into this pocket dimension, then safely dispersed across millions of parallel quantum states. The chamber had grown quiet as the council members studied the data. The mathematics were elegant in their complexity, combining theories from both civilizations in ways nobody had imagined possible. There's something you haven't mentioned, Admiral Sangmai said suddenly. Who will control this network? The mental strain of coordinating such a massive system. Yumei and Hejun exchanged glances. We'll need volunteers from both our peoples, Yumei admitted. A joint neural interface team. Yes, there are risks to the operators, but we've developed safety protocols. The chamber erupted in discussion again, but this time the tone was different. Fear was giving way to desperate hope as the council members realized this might be their only chance for survival. It comes down to trust, Hejun said into the quieting chamber. We're asking you to trust human innovation, just as we're trusting your technology. Apart, neither of us can survive this. Together, we have a chance. Yumei watched as the council members began signaling their votes. Their civilization, ancient and powerful, was being asked to put their fate in the hands of a species they had considered primitive just months ago. But facing extinction, even the most conservative council members were beginning to see the wisdom in human creativity. The countdown continued its silent march toward zero as the greatest collaboration in galactic history began to take shape. In labs and power stations across two civilizations, scientists and engineers prepared to attempt the impossible. They had 40 hours to rewrite the laws of physics or watch their worlds burn in the fire of a gamma-ray burst. The vast expanse of space at the designated intercept point buzzed with activity. Thousands of ships from both civilizations formed a massive array, their positions precisely calculated to create the largest quantum web ever attempted. The combined fleet stretched across millions of kilometers, each vessel carrying specialized equipment for their desperate plan. Inside the central control ship, Yumei sat in the neural interface chair. Her consciousness merged with the quantum AI network. Streams of data flowed through her enhanced mind as she coordinated with hundreds of other operators, both human and alien. Energy synchronization at 87%, she reported, her voice calm despite the immense mental strain. Dimensional pocket is beginning to form. Around her, the control center hummed with activity. Human quantum engineers worked side by side with alien technicians, their different technologies merging in ways that would have seemed impossible just days ago. The alien machinery, built over thousands of years, interfaced seamlessly with human quantum computers thanks to hastily built but ingenious adapters. Do-hyun stood at his observation post, his scales shifting colors with amazement as he watched the humans work. Their neural interfaces glowed softly beneath their skin as they processed massive amounts of data, making complex adjustments that would have taken his people years to calculate. Power fluctuation in Sector 7. Called out an alien technician, their crystalline form pulsing with alarm. Before anyone could panic, 3 human operators simultaneously adjusted their quantum fields, compensating for the fluctuation in microseconds. The power levels stabilized immediately. How did they do that so quickly? Do-hyun asked Jae-yun, who stood beside him monitoring the readings. Their neural networks, Jae-yun explained, her antennae twitching with excitement. They're not just calculating, they're intuiting. Their AI systems think the way they do, finding creative solutions instantly. The main display showed the approaching gamma-ray burst, now just hours away. The deadly wave of radiation stretched across space like a blade of pure energy, capable of stripping planets of their atmospheres in seconds. Quantum web at 92% coverage, Young-Lei announced. Around the fleet, visible strings of energy began connecting the ships, forming a vast geometric pattern in space, beginning final power synchronization. Suddenly, alarms blared across multiple stations. A section of the quantum web was destabilizing, threatening to collapse the entire network. Containment failing in sectors 12 through 15, shouted an alien operator. The power drain is exceeding safety limits. Do-hyun expected panic, but instead, he saw something remarkable. The human operators closed their eyes in unison, their neural interfaces pulsing with increased activity. Through their shared network, they were attacking the problem from multiple angles simultaneously. We're routing power through quantum subspace, Young-Lei said, her voice strained but determined. Implementing solution variant 12 beta. The aliens watched in astonishment as the humans rewrote their power distribution protocols on the fly, creating new pathways that shouldn't have been possible. The destabilizing sections stabilized within seconds. Power flow restored, reported an alien technician, their voice containing a note of awe. But these readings, this shouldn't be possible. He-jun, who had been quietly observing from his station, allowed himself a small smile. Impossible is just another problem to solve, he said. The quantum web continued to grow, its energy patterns becoming more complex by the second. The combined fleet's positions shifted minutely, adjusting to the changing gravitational fields as space itself began to warp around them. Dimensional pocket formation at 63%, Young-Lei reported. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she coordinated the massive effort. Time to burst impact, 2 hours, 17 minutes. Do-hyun watched the humans work, finally understanding why they had achieved so much in such a short time. Their greatest strength wasn't their technology, or even their neural interfaces. It was their ability to adapt, to see solutions where others saw only problems. The vast quantum web now sparkled like a new constellation, stretching across space in a pattern that defied conventional physics. At its heart, human innovation and alien technology worked together in perfect harmony, preparing to attempt something that neither civilization could have achieved alone. As the deadly gamma-ray burst approached, Do-hyun realized that they were witnessing more than just a desperate attempt at survival. They were seeing the birth of a new era in galactic history, where the impossible became possible through the combination of human creativity and alien wisdom. The countdown continued, but now it was matched by another number, the steadily rising percentage of their defensive web's completion. The fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance, but for the first time since the crisis began, hope outweighed fear in the hearts and minds of all present. The Grand Council chamber was silent as the final data streams played across the massive display screens. They showed the gamma-ray burst, a force of nature that should have destroyed 2 civilizations, dissipating harmlessly into the artificial dimension created by human and alien technology working together. Do-hyun stood at the center of the chamber, his scales now a calm blue of certainty. The exhaustion of the past weeks showed in his posture, but his voice was clear and strong as he delivered his final report to the assembled council. "We were wrong," he stated simply, letting the words echo through the vast space. "We saw their physical limitations and assumed weakness, their short lives, their fragile bodies, their dependence on oxygen. We thought these things made humans inferior. Instead, these very limitations drove them to achieve the impossible." The holographic displays showed scenes from the crisis. Human operators interfaced with alien technology, their neural networks processing data at speeds that shouldn't have been possible. The quantum web they had created had done more than save their civilizations. It had changed their understanding of what was possible. In just 2 centuries, Du-Hyun continued, they went from primitive chemical rockets to technologies that surpass our own in many areas. We took millennia to achieve what they did in decades, and now we know why. In the gallery, Hejun and Youngmai sat quietly, their neural interfaces dimmed, but still faintly visible beneath their skin. They had worked for 72 hours straight during the crisis. Their enhanced minds merged with the quantum AI networks in ways that had amazed their alien allies. Their weakness became their strength, Du-Hyun explained. Their short lives made them innovate faster. Their physical fragility pushed them to develop technologies we never imagined. Their limited natural abilities drove them to enhance themselves in ways we thought impossible. The council members stirred, their various forms expressing agreement in different ways. The crystalline beings sparkled with new frequencies, the energy beings pulsed with understanding, and the biological entities showed signs of acceptance. Most importantly, Du-Hyun added, they showed us something we had forgotten in our long history: the power of adaptation. While we perfected what we knew, they constantly sought new solutions. While we relied on our strengths, they learned to overcome their weaknesses. The voting began, each council member signaling their decision in their own unique way. The result was unprecedented: unanimous approval for a permanent alliance with Earth. In just 200 years, humanity had earned their place among the stars. After the session, Jae-yun found Du-Hyun in one of the station's observation lounges. They stood together, watching Earth's ships prepare to return home, their quantum-enhanced drives creating beautiful patterns in space. They look so weak, Jae-yun mused, her antennae moving in thoughtful patterns. But perhaps that's exactly why they became so strong. They never had the luxury of relying on natural advantages. Do-Hyun nodded, remembering how the humans had calmly faced challenges that had terrified their more advanced allies. They turned their greatest weaknesses into their greatest strengths, he said. And in doing so, they taught us that there's always another way to solve a problem. Through the viewport, they could see the quantum web being dismantled, but its effects would last forever. The humans hadn't just saved 2 civilizations, they had shown the galaxy a new way forward, where limitations were just challenges waiting to be overcome. As Earth's ships disappeared into quantum space, heading home to their fragile but ingenious civilization, Du-Hyun realized that the galaxy would never be the same. The species they had once dismissed as weak had proven that true strength comes not from natural advantages, but from learning to overcome natural limitations. In the end, it wasn't just about survival or technology or even innovation. It was about perspective. The humans had shown them that sometimes what looks like weakness from one angle can be strength from another. And in doing so, they had changed the course of galactic history forever. The stars twinkled in the vast darkness, and somewhere out there, new possibilities waited to be discovered. The age of cooperation had begun, and no one could predict what impossible things would become possible next.